The 2022 season has finally come to a close, and it has been an incredibly fun one. Even if Abu Dhabi wasn't overly eventful, it was certainly emotional. We had to say goodbye to some incredibly beloved drivers, but also have the excitement of the next season to come along too. It was a mix of emotions for me, but let's go through my 3 winners and 3 losers from the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. My first winner, and well, he's won everything else, so I may as well give him this one as well. Max Verstappen goes down as my first winner from the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, starting on pole position, which hasn't happened as much as you'd think this season, and then turned it into another win, which has happened as much as you'd think this season. To be precise, it's his 15th win in 22 races for Red Bull, and he made it look simple again, summarising it best himself, saying it was all about tyre management. I think we looked after the mediums quite well, and then onto the hard tyres. I was literally managing from lap 1 to the end, and he led from start to finish, scores himself a hat-trick of victories in Abu Dhabi with 3 on the bounce. I think he could still be out there right now, and those hard tyres would just still be working for him. Although the reason that he could tyre manage the entire time was because he was so much quicker than anybody else on the track, and he has been all year, really. I know it's not easy to like Red Bull and Verstappen. They don't make it easy to be likeable. It feels like every other race weekend we have a controversy of some kind, from budget cap infringements, media battles, team orders arguments. There is a lot going on behind the scenes at Red Bull this season, but with all that being said, when Verstappen has had that helmet on his head and that car on the track, away from all of the noise, he has been magical to watch. And a double world champion, 454 points in a season, which is a record, 15 wins in a season, which is a record. He has taken the entire season in his stride and looks hungry for even more in seasons to come. And he will be doing it without the help from my first loser and his teammate Sergio Perez, by the looks of things. Coming into the final race, the Mexican was on exactly the same points as Charles Leclerc, and after what happened on the final lap of the Brazilian Grand Prix, was coming into this weekend with a brand new perspective, let's say, on his positioning within the team. As much as Red Bull have achieved this season, and Perez has picked up more podiums this season than he has in the entirety of his career before 2022, I think that 1-2 would have been what the team and Perez would have been striving for coming into this weekend. For the team, it's something that they've never achieved before. Even during Vettel's dominance era, Mark Webber never came in second place, and for Perez, it's a chance to finish as high as possible, obviously, without winning a championship, and be known as that runner-up forever in the history books. But it wasn't meant to be. It started well, actually. Second on the grid, the track setup is leaned towards advantaging the setup of the Red Bull car. The strategy was their downfall, which is very rare for Red Bull. Perez came in very early for that second stop, I think anticipating that Verstappen and Leclerc would do a double stop as well, but that was not the case, and Checo put in the position where he had to make up almost a second a lap, even to get close to Charles Leclerc, and would maybe have a shot at overtaking him on the final lap of the Grand Prix, but he tried so hard. Probably the traffic which cost him the most. Battles between Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo, and AlphaTauri cars kept stopping him in his tracks as he was trying to go through. Specifically, Pierre Gasly did a huge favour for Charles Leclerc and held up Sergio Perez a huge amount in his hunt for second place. Not exactly what the Red Bull team would have wanted from their junior driver, but hey, he's off to Alpine anyway. But where Sergio Perez lost, Charles Leclerc won after a very topsy-turvy season for Ferrari. There's not too much more to add from the on-track side of things. Leclerc held on to the back of the Red Bulls just enough at the start of the Grand Prix, and then opted for the same strategy as Max Verstappen, had a gamble that Sergio Perez wouldn't be quick enough to catch him, and it paid off and meant that he picked up second place in the Drivers' Championship by just 3 points to Perez. He even came out of the car saying, honestly, I'm really happy. There was obviously the pressure of keeping the second place in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, and to be performing that well in an environment like this means a lot to me. Considering the massive challenges that Ferrari have faced this year, Leclerc has been very quick. He's had a few errors. France is always going to come up and be discussed when we look back at this 2022 season, of course, but more poles than anybody else this season just shows that the raw pace in that car is there, the raw pace in Charles Leclerc is there, and they just have to find a way of converting that into more consistent race pace, along with the stability in their decision making. Abu Dhabi saw them, in Leclerc's words, establish a plan that they followed at perfection. We managed to put Checo under pressure at the end of the first stint, which made him stop and build a tyre advantage. Maybe, just maybe, Ferrari are learning from their mistakes and they'll take a step in the right direction for 2023. When all was said and done, though, they held on. Leclerc and Ferrari both finished second in their championships, and they come into 2023 ready to go again. Whereas my second losers ended the season in third place in the Constructors' Championship, it has to be Mercedes. Mexico and Brazil were huge highs for the team, picking up their first win of the season last time out in Brazil, and their race winner, George Russell, said after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix that our car only performs in a really narrow window, and that this weekend was a reality check for the Mercedes team. If we look at this particular race for the two drivers, starting with George Russell, looked to come out of the blocks really well, and actually was a little bit hard done by after the start as Carlos Sainz pinned him up against the wall and he lost a place to Lando Norris, but looked to have decent pace on that first stint, then came in for the pit stop, and considering how cool, calm, collected Mercedes usually are, it was a real shambles. The rear right tyre just would not go on. A 5-second stop led to an unsafe release in front of the McLaren of Lando Norris, which led to a 5-second penalty, and from that point it seemed like George Russell was just pretty much playing the strategy game, maybe hoping for some kind of safety car or some kind of miracle, but really after the penalty his race was basically over early. Whereas Hamilton's race was actually over early, the first mechanical retirement of the entire year for the Mercedes team, as Lewis Hamilton's Merc came to a stop a few laps from the end with a hydraulic issue. Whether that was linked to the incident on lap 1, where he went wheel to wheel with Carlos Sainz through that chicane, obviously being edged out by the Spaniard, went wide, flinging the front end of that car up into the air, then he bounced all the way over the curbs, is yet to be seen, but not the end of the 2022 season he would have been hoping for. That does therefore mean that the 2022 season is the first season in Hamilton's entire career that he will not have won at least one Grand Prix. He also dropped to 6th place in the battle for the top 6, and he didn't get to do any donuts at the end of the Grand Prix either. All in all, I'm sure that he is just happy to see the end of 2022 and hopeful that the 2023 campaign has some more opportunities for him to add to that total wins tally, and also next season he can take on Max Verstappen at the top end of the standings as well. However, my third and final winner won't even be taking part next season. He could have spun out on lap 1 and I'd still have had him as a winner from this Grand Prix. It's Sebastian Vettel. A big weekend for Formula 1 and a busy weekend for Sebastian Vettel as he took part in his 299th and final Formula 1 Grand Prix. The 4-time world champion was given a guard of honour before the race even took place, and it was not an easy weekend for the German driver. The Aston Martin team committing early to a one-stop strategy, which in the end just wasn't the right choice. The final 5 laps on those mediums, he was a sitting duck, but at least we got to see him battle through the field again, secure a 10th place finish and a final point in Formula 1. But of course, that all pales into insignificance when you think about what Vettel has brought to this sport of Formula 1. I have not known Formula 1 without Sebastian Vettel. I got into the sport around 2008, 2009. He was there towards the top of the entire time. I've seen him win championships and be the most hated driver on the grid. I've also seen him pursue his dream, racing for Ferrari, and come so incredibly close to following in the footsteps of his hero. And I've also seen him come back towards the end of his career, changing the sport for the better, standing up for his fellow drivers, and just being an incredible role model to millions around the world. I'm an emotional person underneath the facade, and seeing him leave the sport is the first time I've been truly moved by a retirement of a driver. There was never going to be a good time for him to leave, but I think it's the right time for him to leave. He has his championships, his 53 victories, his 57 pole positions. He gets to leave still being competitive as well, still showing that he is good enough to be in Formula 1 and hasn't stuck around so long that we see this huge drop off in his racecraft. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm glad that he's leaving on his own terms, and I'm trying not to think of it as the end of Sebastian Vettel in Formula 1, but more the beginning of a new chapter, as I'm not sure whether he'll be around the sport in any capacity, but I really hope that he is, however minor that may be, and I don't have the words to summarize everything he has done for so many people across the entire globe, so all I can say is danke Seb. From one of the greatest to have ever done it to two of the most error-prone, my final losers are Mick Schumacher and also kinda Nicholas Latifi. Outperforming teammate Kevin Magnussen this weekend was a good way for Mick Schumacher to go out of his Haas career and make them question even just a little bit their decision to replace a young and upcoming German driver with an old and slightly boring German driver. However, lazily crashing into Nicholas Latifi in one of the season's most clumsy and slow speed collisions that you're going to see was a good reminder to Haas that maybe they have made the right choice with Schumacher, as they can now go into the 2023 season with confidence of at least a lower damage bill, if nothing else. I think Schumacher does have the possibility of returning and has shown enough for a team to maybe roll the dice on him in the future. Whereas I don't think the same can be said for Nicholas Latifi, who slots himself in as a loser, even though the collision wasn't his fault, and I'm not saying that at all. I mean, he was going very, very slowly through turn 5, but Mick Schumacher still shouldn't have bumped into the back of him. But for Latifi to end his Formula 1 career with a retirement due to damage that he picked up from that collision, it's a real shame. I have absolutely nothing against Nicholas Latifi as a person. He has been a great professional for the Williams team and always seemed like a great personality to have around the garage as well, but he was never going to light the grid on fire with a stunning performance on track. 3 years in Formula 1 has been arguably too many for the Canadian, and I wish him all the best in the future, but I don't think we'll see him in Formula 1 again. Let's round out the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix with some honourable mentions. Lando Norris has to be a win as well. He finishes best of the rest, even though he hates that saying, by an absolute mile, and got the fastest lap on top of it for an extra point. Teammate Daniel Ricciardo also could have been a win, as he gets a points finish in his final race for the Mclaren team. Whereas Fernando Alonso was a loss, although he may have seen it as a win, as he finally is able to leave that Alpine team after another reliability issue for the Spaniard. And that does indeed round up my winners, not only for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but for the 2022 season. Thank you all so much for everything that this year has been. Like, I have achieved so many things, met so many people, made videos I never thought possible. It's been absolutely incredible. As always, let me know your winners and losers in the comments down below. Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you next time for a winners and losers in 2023.